the Grudge franchise. If someone dies while in the grip of a rage, a curse is born. The franchise started in 2002 with the horror movie Ju-On, or The Grudge in brackets, and it was remade in 2004 with Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy. Soon The Grudge is coming back in 2020, and instead of a straight up remake, it'll be a new chapter in this canon, according to Nicholas Pesk. But all that being said, The Grudge is straight up creepy, so of course, we gotta compare to real criminals. My name is Abby, and today's video is top 10 real life criminals scarier than The Grudge. Number 10. VERA RENCZI. Back in the 1920s, VERA RENCZI got her moniker from confessing to poisoning 35 people with arsenic, the moniker being the Black Widow. First person who she killed was her first husband, who she suspected was having an affair, and then her next husband, which she suspected the same. Then the numbers racked up of men she either had a clandestine affair with or lovers she took up time with, and they kept mysteriously disappearing. She did things like this if she thought that the man was losing interest or loved another woman more, and when I say she would do this, she would kill them. She kept the bodies of men she killed with arsenic in zinc-lined coffins in her wine cellar. When her son found them, she killed him as well. She used the excuse that these men had abandoned her instead of her killing them, so she was able to avoid suspicion of the authorities for a while. But the wife of one of the men RENCZI took as a lover grew suspicious of her husband and followed him to RENCZI's house, and then he never came out. Police came to investigate the disappearance and found 32 coffins of men RENCZI poisoned. It said that she wanted to be the last woman these men were ever with, and she even said to police that sometimes she would sit in an armchair among the coffins of these dead men to be surrounded by all of her former suitors. So yeah, Black Widow seems like a suitable name for a poisonous lady killer. But from one to another, at number 9 we have Jack the Ripper. Now, you've probably heard of him, or them, because Jack the Ripper is the moniker for a notorious unidentified killer from late 1888 in London, England. Other names of the killer were the Whitechapel Butcher or the Leather Apron, and around that time in England, ladies of the night were not entirely illegal, and it was pretty decently known that if one disappeared or suffered harm, it wasn't investigated as thoroughly as other disappearances. But in the string of killings that started in August of 1888, things were different. Whoever Jack the Ripper was mutilated and gutted parts of women. They took out kidneys and uteruses, and then whoever Jack the Ripper was, they stopped killing. At least in that decided fashion of gutting and taking organs, they stopped killing that fall. And people wanted answers of who did this, but there were none. Someone killed and gutted women and got away with it. Now, current evidence points to Aaron Kominski, a 23-year-old Polish barber and prime police suspect at the time, because new genetic tests kind of have come out and resurfaced, but the case still isn't closed. So Jack the Ripper remains a mystery. Switching over to a prolific mass murderer on another continent, at number 8 we have a former Siberian policeman from Russia named MIKHAIL POPKOV. He has more victims than the Grudge. Between 1992 and 2007, pretty recently, Popkov is thought to have murdered 55 women and 1 policeman near Irkutsk. The method he used was offering his victims late-night rides in his car, and 3 of the cases would have been when he was on duty in his police car, not just his own car. Also, it's said that he killed the women and 1 man with an axe and hammer and then dumped the bodies by the roadside, in forests, or in a cemetery. He was caught in 2012 and given a life sentence in 2015 after confessing to 20 of the murders. His main targets were women between the ages of 15 and 40 that he deemed immoral. He also was given a second life sentence after that. Now on to number 7, LIZZIE Borden house. Now, this story and happenings kind of came out of nowhere. The Borden murders of the now infamous LIZZIE Borden house started in the late 1800s when Lizzie Borden, her father and stepmother, were both murdered brutally with a hatchet. The maid of the house at the time was asleep when no one else was said to be home when Andrew Borden, Lizzie's father, was killed. The maid woke up from a nap when she heard Lizzie Borden screaming about her father's death. And then when authorities came to investigate, they also found Lizzie's stepmother, Abby Borden, and found that she had probably been dead for even longer than her husband, even though Lizzie had said that her stepmother was out visiting a sick friend. Now, between the holes in the story and someone seeing Lizzie burn a dress she said was stained, people thought Lizzie Borden to be the murderer. It was kind of like, after all, she was a Sunday school teacher and a spinster at the time from a well-off family, but that being said, she was the main suspect. She had a good enough case at the trial that she was acquitted, but whoever did commit these murders gives a good reason to fear a hatchet. There were 19 hits against Abby Borden and 11 against Andrew, and their skulls were caved in. Now, some say Lizzie and the maid did the acts together possibly, while some rumor that Andrew Borden's illegitimate son William did it, but either way, whoever did it is a monster. And if you look into it, let me know who you think did it, because it's kind of a confusing one. That's one house in New Orleans, but this is another house in New Orleans with a troubled past. At number 6, the Gardet-Laprette House, aka the Sultan's Palace. Back in the late 1830s, a wealthy plantation owner by the name of Jean-Baptiste Laprette bought a pink residence in the French Quarter as a vacation home and then later added wrought iron lace rails to the balconies. Now, Laprette wanted to rent the place to someone else when he wasn't using it, and a young rich guy from Turkey answered his call. This renter came to be known as the Sultan, and he moved in with a full entourage with a harem and eunuchs. And then he threw mysterious parties according to the neighbors. And while this already starts off and sounds like a fun tale, the property is known for what happened next. One morning, a passerby spotted blood seeping out from under the door. When authorities got in to investigate, they found everyone in there dismembered and mutilated, and the Sultan had been buried alive in the courtyard. At the time, pirates were blamed for the murders, but there is a theory that the partying renter was the brother of an actual Sultan who wanted his male relatives killed so that he could keep power. Not really known. But on to number 5, Albert Fish. Hamilton Howard Fish, aka Albert Fish, was also known as the Gray Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, and the Boogeyman. A lot of names. He was born in 1870 and began his crimes in 1890. Over his lifetime, he admitted to molesting more than 400 children and torturing and killing several of them. He is known for being one of the vilest pedophiles, serial child killers, and cannibals of all time. One such instance of one of these crimes was when he befriended a family after offering their son a job, but before getting that son to his supposed job, he offered to bring his younger sister to a party. Now, the family, trusting him at the time, let him take their 10-year-old Grace to this party, and she was never seen again. 6 years after the disappearance, the family received an anonymous letter detailing the murder and cannibalism of Grace, their daughter. This led to the arrest and eventual confessions of Fish, and he pleaded innocent by reason of insanity, but the jury found him sane and was sentenced to die by electrocution. On to number 4, Delphine LaLaurie. Another cursed home could be the LaLaurie Mansion, home to Delphine LaLaurie, another New Orleans socialite with Creole background. She was born in 1787 and married 3 times due to widowing, not divorce, but although she appeared polite in society, she was horrendous to those in her home. She kept slaves, people as property, and was found to torture many of them in the slaves' quarters, as well as throughout their tasks in the day. She strung them up in chains. She was seen burying a child on her property after he fell off a roof, and it is unknown how many others could be buried on her property. Her husband, at the time, told investigators to mind their own business when they were looking into mysterious disappearances, but during this, Delphine was able to run away from the house before word got out that she abused slaves. Then an angry mob stormed and then destroyed the house. Rightfully so. It is believed that she fled to Paris, which is where she died, so yes, scarier than the Grudge since she kept people she owned alive just to torture them. It's just messed up. But also, that's not the only house where disgusting deeds went down. At number 3, we have Ed Gein. Ed Gein was born in 1906 in Wisconsin. According to his biography, he grew up in a repressive household with a dominating mother, and her death in 1945 had his mental health going way down. He had already lost his father and his brother, and it is suspected he is thought to be behind his brother's death, but why? Well, in 1957, Bernice Worden went missing and her son Frank was suspicious of Gein, because he saw him as a shady character. Frank also happened to be a deputy sheriff, so he and the team apprehended Gein at a neighbor's house and sent other authorities to Ed Gein's place to add to the case. But what they found was definitely more than what they were looking for. At Gein's house, they found the missing warden's body, headless and hanging from the ceiling. At the time was gutted, and there were jars of organs in the house, not just wardens, and there were skulls being used as soup bowls. Gein did admit that he would dig up corpses for cutting off body parts to make face masks or skin suits to wear around the house. He confessed to killing Worden and one other when he was under questioning. He was deemed not fit to stand trial due to insanity and was committed to a hospital. 10 years later, when he was deemed fit, he was found guilty but also insane at the time, and so he was sent back to the hospital. I assume this was because it was seen as the best fit for both his mental health and the safety of others. It's scary where a mind can go, right? Now, a more recent criminal, scarier than the Grudge, is our number 2, Robert PICKTON from British Columbia in Canada. Similar to Jack the Ripper, pig farmer Robert PICKTON targeted those with marginal lifestyles, mainly being sex trade workers. He was even arrested in 1997 on charges of attempted murder, assault with a weapon, and forcible confinement, but the charges were eventually dropped because the victim was a drug addict and not considered a competent witness. It wasn't until 2002, when police were searching the pig farm for illegal guns, when the police began to investigate further into PICKTON. They found illegal and unregistered guns, and also items connected to missing women. During the investigation, they found enough information to lay 26 murder charges on PICKTON, though he told an undercover RCMP officer he killed 49 women and wanted to make it 50, while he was in a cell with what he thought was just another detainee. Now, the part of PICKTON's story that makes it even more gruesome is that he fed his corpses of his victims to pigs. As a pig farmer, PICKTON had his own meat processing facility, which most likely made it much easier to process the corpses and feed them to the pigs. But on to number 1. JAVED IQBAL. IQBAL's story is one of the rare cases where he was not found or investigated, but admitted to his crimes. In December of 1999, he sent a letter to police and a newspaper editor confessing to the murders of 100 boys, all between the ages of 6 and 16. In his letter, he said he targeted mainly runaways and orphans, and then he would strangle them, dismember them, and then dispose of their bodies using acid. Any remains that were left over after that process were dumped in a local river. When the police searched his house, he had neatly laid out evidence for police to find, including vats of acid with partially dissolved human remnants that he wanted to leave as evidence. Although he said he would drown himself in his letter, he was not found in an extensive search, and he turned himself in a month later in person. He was sentenced to hanging, and the judge said, "You will be strangled to death in front of the parents whose children you killed. Your body will then be cut into 100 pieces and put in acid the same way you killed the children." But he was found hanged in his cell before his execution was carried out. And that is where these criminal stories end today. Those are top 10 real-life criminals scarier than the Grudge, and yes, the manifestation of an urge for control and power can be a scary thing, especially when it leads to strong acts of violence, so be careful and take note of when someone you know is acting off so you can take care of them and care for them, because we don't know what one another is going through. Take care and be kind to one another, and maybe watch some cat videos for a break after this video. I recommend it. Have a cup of tea. Now, let me know down below what you think, and while you're down there, give us a like and subscribe, hit that bell for notifications, and check us out on Facebook for some more exclusive content coming your way. But until next time, goodbye.